et du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
And that's where we are. Good morning and welcome to Morning Joe. Joe, Willie, and I have been looking through these tapes and these reports through the night. Let's get right into them. Excerpts of the president's interview with legendary journalist Bob Woodward, in which Trump admits to intentionally mislead the public on the true threat of the virus. Contained within the 18 interviews, reportedly totaling 9 hours, was this.
So, what's going on? Give me a moment of talking to somebody, going through this with Fauci or somebody who kind of it caused a pivot in your mind, because it's clear just from what's on the public record that you went through a pivot on this to, oh my God, the gravity is almost inexplicable and unexplainable.
Well, I think, Bob, really, to be honest with you,
sure, I want you to.
I wanted to always play it down. I still like playing it down.
Yes,
because I don't want to create a panic.
That was March 19th. Now to some of the ways the president carried out his plan to play it down. One concerns the comparisons he made to the flu, that he knew were false. Here's what he said to Woodward on February 7th about how deadly the coronavirus can be on February 7th. President Trump to Woodward, "It goes through the air, Bob. That's always tougher than the touch. You know, the touch, you don't have to touch things, right? But the air, you just breathe the air, and that's how it's passed. And so that's a very tricky one. That's a very delicate one. It's almost more deadly than your, even your strenuous flus." Then weeks later, Trump said this at a campaign rally in South Carolina.
So, a number that nobody heard of, that I heard of recently, and I was shocked to hear it, 35,000 people on average die each year from the flu. Did anyone know that? 35,000. That's a lot of people. It could go to 100,000. It could be 27,000. They say usually a minimum of 27 goes up to 100,000 people a year die. And so far, we have lost nobody to coronavirus in the United States.
The death toll is now more than 190,000 people. The president also intentionally misled the public on the effects of the virus on young people. Here's what he told Woodward in March, followed by his remarks on Fox News early last month. President Trump, he says this, "Now it's turning out it's not just old people, Bob. Today and yesterday, some startling facts came out. It's not just old or older people, as if they don't matter. It's not just older people. It's plenty of young people." But early last month, Trump said, if you look at children are almost, and I would almost say definitely, but almost immune from this disease. They just don't have a problem. According to excerpts from Woodward's new book, National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien warned the president on January 28th, quote, January 28th, "This will be the biggest national security threat you face in your presidency. This is going to be the roughest thing you face."
That was, by the way, just for perspective, that was January the 28th, Willie. about the same time. It may have been, in fact, the exact day that Joe Biden wrote his op-ed in the USA Today, the 28th or the 29th, where Joe Biden said, "We are not ready for the coming pandemic. Mr. President, please listen to your scientists. Please listen to your doctors." And of course, Donald Trump didn't do that. He just chose to lie.
Yeah, I mean, the reason Joe Biden was able to write that op-ed and say those things is because anyone near public health knew that that was the way it had to be handled, knew how serious it was. And I'm glad you went to the people affected by this, because that's what I was thinking about yesterday when the president said on March 19th, I wanted to always play it down. I still like playing it down. I thought about those families who lost somebody. I thought about the people who lost a job. I thought about the doctors and nurses who were in overrun ICUs and emergency rooms. I thought about all the parents homeschooling their kids, still doing that today. Parents who've had to make a decision maybe to quit their jobs so they could be home and teach their kids. This stuff had real impact, and now there's nowhere for the president to hide. He cannot say that this was an anonymous source. He cannot say it was the fake news or it was the deep state. It's on tape. It's his voice. He can't even say he was misquoted. It's right there for the world to see, his dereliction that definitely cost lives.
And Joe, that dereliction, there are tens of thousands of people who are dead today, and you ask the scientists and you ask the doctors, that could have been prevented. Other countries have far different numbers than us because they mitigated, because they put social distancing guidelines in place, because they wore masks. They didn't have a leader who who flouted the simple things that could have been done to save lives. And the president did not mobilize the Defense Production Act to get mass testing going. There are still places in this country where you can't get tests unless you're showing big symptoms. Well, states like Montana, where people are dying. So despite that warning, the president continued to mislead.
And by the way, that warning from his national security advisor that has to worry about threats from China, threats from Russia, threats from terrorists, threats from across the world, from North Korea. Despite all of those threats, he had told the president that this will be the biggest national security threat that you face in your presidency. This is going to be the roughest thing you face.
It is Thursday, the 10th of September of 2020, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef. And our daily special is Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. A little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life. Well, you'd think we might be having barbecue. Yes, the West Coast is on fire, and we have all this charred wood right now that we could be using for, I don't know, some sort of smoking element for our food. Except it already has impregnated everything with smoke smell. And not only just the smell, the actual smoke, too. The smell has to come from somewhere. Well, we'll get into the weather here in a little bit. And yeah, wildfires are now part of the weather, aren't they? And we'll get into how unhealthy the air has gotten. And has Trump mentioned anything about the wildfires? The first thing he's going to say is that it's our fault for not sweeping the forest floors enough. Okay. We know where his head is at. And I think some people have actually considered it to be genocide. Yes! It almost sounds like he wants the American people to die. And that little tidbit of funny that I've been mentioning since, Trump became, shall I say the P word? Well, no, I won't. Since he was installed in the Oval Office, I have been repeating that property is always more valuable when delivered vacant to a hostile foreign power. It's one of the first rules of real estate. especially when you're dealing with nation states now, isn't it? So the more Americans that are no longer here to get in the way, the easier it is for Vlad and his little green men. They're not so little, but they wear the green really well. It looks good on them, too. So more and more are finding out that something's up with Trump. Some people say he's sick. You know, after he had told Woodward, oh, yeah, this thing's dangerous. I'm going to kill people. All you have to do is breathe. You know, the touch. That's usually how it is, the touch. But no, all you have to do is breathe. Way worse than the flu. So then he holds his super spreader rallies and takes social distancing signs off of the stadium chairs in these stadiums that he's having his super spreader Nuremberg rallies at. What's up with that? A lot of people say that is sick. Well, yeah, it's sick, but I suppose if you have a final solution for everything, things are going to be final, and that's the solution. Look, anybody who has Mein Kampf as bedside reading is probably going to be influenced in some way, you would think. God. And what gets me is that the people around him are just, I don't know, using it for their own devilish ends. They think they can ride the tiger? Is that it? Yeah. Hold on the tail of that tiger and ride it. Okay, history will not look kindly on any of these people. I hope we have history in the future. I really do. I'm not so certain anymore, especially when you think of how impermanent paper is. And everything that's on digital, there's going to be some other technology reading that, and will we have the ancient technology available to us in the future to be able to follow the history that we're putting up in the cloud? Literally. Smoke clouds. There's our history up in air. So a little bit of an update. The ranch, the family ranch up on the way to Sisters in Blue River, is not as damaged as we were first informed of. But it was damaged. Some outbuildings burned to the ground. The actual structure itself was not so badly damaged, but boy, did the fire get close. So yeah, some people might call it some singeing. Well, yeah, I guess you could call it that. The more important aspect is that the folks have been renting this place for, almost 15 years now. They were not hurt. And that's the most important part of this whole story. And, I guess I alluded to that because they did call to let us know. So, I haven't been up to the ranch for a bit, but as I mentioned yesterday, I have a lot of childhood memories there. And I also have a lot of memories of when my late son was a child, and we would go there. So it has a soft spot in my heart, and I hate seeing that history go up in smoke. Who wouldn't? So we were actually quite concerned yesterday. We were under a Stage 3 evacuation order, which means bug out. And then we were reduced to a Stage 2, which is get ready, we'll let you know. So we were out the door when they updated the evacuation order back down to 2. So, yeah, looked like that wildfire was blowing our way, and it was a mere miles. Maybe about 5-6 miles. And that apparently, when the wind is blowing that stiff, fire can travel quite quickly. Quite. So I'm laughing. Kind of. One of those sick Gallows Huber laughs. Yeah. Game over, man. Game over. No, it is no game over. But we have our bug out bag ready. we will be taking these workhorse machines that have been working like horses for all this time here at the mothership for Netroots Radio. Even though they're going to be replaced, they still work. And even when they get replaced, they will still be working, except not as workhorses. But we will grab those because there's a lot of data on them. And if we do get knocked out of here and knocked off the air, I do have the cell phone, the smartphone, so I can at least let people know what's going on Twitter. I'll do it there for you. And we'll try to get set up and get some sort of fiber optic connection so that we can broadcast. You know, you can't broadcast wireless. It just doesn't handle it. The amount of input and output I need is greater than what wireless provides. So we do it by fiber optic. So if that does occur, stand by. Do check Twitter, and we'll keep you informed about what's going on. It's pretty scary. So, I mentioned yesterday, everybody has been wanting to live on Mars, and now that Earth is turning into Mars, everybody's whining about it. Jeez, I thought you wanted to live on Mars. I mean, I didn't want to. Place is a caustic, poisonous dump. That's why no one lives there anymore. Why do we want to go back? We came here. So let's not destroy Earth like apparently we destroyed Mars. I know you can blame it on the core slowing down and not putting out a magnetic field and cosmic rays and particles from the sun ripped away the atmosphere and all that. But, I suspect something else happened in our less evolved state. And we had something to do with the destruction of that atmosphere. And now here we are, destroying this atmosphere too, along with everything else on it, underneath the atmosphere. Though I do have a belief that the Earth is a living organism, and we're a bunch of fleas, and the Earth is trying to shake us off right now. Right now. All right. So with all that going on, we have a pandemic, we have wildfires caused by climate change, which no one wants to talk about. Oh, this isn't climate change. Really? Jesus. Oh, something that I'm just reminded about the disassociative capabilities of a particular body politic that happens to fall under the maggot flag. So we're visiting with my Trump bro, and because he purchased another place along the river, a really nice place, and refurbished it and upgraded it, and it's a really nice lodge type place along the river. So we were visiting with him, and of course, my brother has the flagpole with the maggot flag up on, up fortunately underneath the American flag. I was afraid he's going to put it above it because he doesn't know. But and then, his vehicles, he's got like a couple of big old monster trucks. So, every corner of the truck bed has a maggot flag. He has a couple of other trucks where, the maggot flag flies. He's got a maggot banner hanging off of the rafters in front of his little fishing lodge there. So he's telling me a story about we just finally moved in here, and I parked my vehicles, and I just pulled in, and somebody came around right here on the road and flipped me off. I'd been here for 10 minutes, and somebody flipped me off. I go, they were flipping you off? Yeah, they flipped me off. Well, I think that maybe they were upset that the guy you're flying a flag for hasn't said anything about bounties on his soldiers' heads. And of course, my Trumper goes, that's fake news. Everything is fake news that makes Trump look bad. And of course, my brother is a COVID denier, except I don't know what he's going to say now, except, oh, that was a political hit job coming out of Trump's mouth. These people are so stupid. And yeah, I'm saying it. My Trump bro has some innate intelligence, but he's pretty much uneducated. I mean, let's be clear. You have to be able to follow this guy, or a craven, soulless ghoul. Maybe it's that too. It's probably not one or the other. It's more than likely both. What's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Hey, it's Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays, and I got to remind you, do not diss the grit. Okay? And some people have taken me to task because I keep insisting that the only true way, the real way to cook grits is in milk. And a lot of people have taken exception to that. But I'm making a line in the sand, and it's milk. Okay, Trump at the top, as you know, because every now and then I like to get Morning Joe on because they have the latest tidbit of info, and that's why they're there now. Well, Trump intentionally misled America about coronavirus because, hey, Wall Street lives matter, my friend. That was the one thing that Joe and Mika didn't mention. He didn't want to start a panic on Wall Street. Okay. On the rest of the menu, Kathryn Kimball Mizelle is the 10th Trump judicial nominee to be so inexperienced. She was rated not qualified by the American Bar Association, but nobody listens to them anymore. Nobody. Trump has secretly ordered the halt to airport coronavirus screenings of international travelers coming into the U.S. because I guess we want to spread it more. I keep telling you, property is always more valuable when delivered vacant to a hostile foreign power. And General Mad Dog Mattis quit the White House when he was told to commit a felony. There's some things that people will just not do. After the break, we move to the chef's table where a Mexican journalist was found beheaded in the violent Gulf Coast state of Veracruz. Wow, that's like a virus. It's been going around. And Russian state hackers are suspected in targeting Biden's main election campaign advisory firm. That is breaking news, but when you got a president lying to you about a coronavirus pandemic, it just gets second billing now, doesn't it? Well, not here on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. At the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, to the rightish of the page is our chat room link monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the leftish of the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com is the link to our Patreon page. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, you assure that we are able to pay our bills. You assure that we are able to fly under the radar. And most importantly, you assure that we are able then to broadcast 24/7, 365 continuously as we have for almost the last 10 years. And it's because of you. And thank you so much for your generosity. And we need it even more. It's mere months now. I have to get a couple of machines, which I've been doing for a while here. We've been piecing some things together, but now I need to get a couple of actual workhorses that will replace the workhorses that we currently are working like horses. So if you could afford an espresso type coffee drink, I've said this so many times before, I'm sorry, but if you could and send that amount of money our way, we stretch those dollars beyond compare because we're quantum mechanics when it comes to stretching dollars. Yes, we're able to go on the quantum level. And I got to tell you, we leave no strange quark unstretched. No, we don't. And we thank you for allowing us to go on the quantum level to stretch those dollars because, well, we have a civic duty as the founders originally intended, and we are intent on fulfilling it. Thank you. Thank you for your generosity, and thank you for allowing us to fulfill a duty that, well, I don't know. We love to do it anyway. Thank you. All right. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter. It is so simple. You just go to @Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that. And I got to tell you, Tom takes care of a lot more than that. In fact, he has updated our homepage, and our picture scroll at the top has a little message. And pretty much it is, hey, you know what? You better vote. Like our lives depend on it. Because it does, indeed. If you would like to follow me on Twitter, do so @JusticePutnam. I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's about 10 minutes before showtime, and then I get that linked up on social media so that people can link up on social media. And the show notes and links is a very important part of this multimedia operation here that we call West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. If you would like to follow the show on Twitter, do so @CookbookWest, and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever podcasts can be found. Alrighty, let's dive into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Did you know it's Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays? I think I've said that a few times already. Emily Singer of the American Independent brings us this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The American Bar Association yesterday, Wednesday, rated one of Trump's nominees to a federal district court in Florida as not qualified. The 10th Trump judicial nominee to earn that stamp of disapproval. In a letter to Senate Judiciary Committee Chair Lindsey Graham and Ranking Member Dianne Feinstein, the ABA said Kathryn Kimball Mizelle does not have the experience to serve as a judge for the U.S. District Court for the Middle District of Florida, which Trump nominated her to. Mizelle has been a practicing lawyer for a little less than 8 years, far short of the 12-year minimum the ABA says a judicial nominee should have. Mizelle has also never tried a case, which the ABA has led to a substantial majority of its standing committee members, which vote on whether a president's judicial nominees are qualified to serve on the federal bench, and has determined Mizelle is not qualified to serve. Well, they're all biased because they all have experience, and they're just obviously biased against the ones who don't. Ms. Mizelle has a very keen intellect, a strong work ethic, and an impressive resume. She presents as a delightful person, and she has many friends who support her nomination. Her integrity and demeanor are not in question. These attributes, however, simply do not compensate for the short time she has actually practiced law, and her lack of meaningful trial experience. Randall Noel, the chair of the ABA Standing Committee, wrote in the letter to Graham and Feinstein. Mizelle is now the 10th Trump judicial pick to be deemed not qualified by the ABA, a departure from past presidents who had few, if any, judicial nominees earning that rating. Former President Barack Obama, for example, did not nominate any judges the ABA deemed to be not qualified. Well, that's because they're biased. They're all about experience. And Obama, was the head of the law school over there at Harvard. Come on. Are you really going to give up our country to the elite expert class? Well, damn right we better. Other judicial nominees who are not qualified ratings include Justin R. Walker, who Trump first nominated as a judge to the Western District of Kentucky, despite the fact that he never tried a case. Well, Trump hates judges, and once you try a case, yeah, you have been brainwashed into this system of the deep state. Based on a review of his biographical information and questions with Mr. Walker, it was challenging to determine how much of his 10 years since graduation from law school has been spent in the practice of law. The ABA wrote in a letter in July of 2019, after his members deemed him not qualified to serve as a judge, even crediting the time spent in judicial clerkships. Mr. Walker's practice experience is less than his 10 years since graduation and significantly less than the 12 years of legal practice experience stated in our criteria. Trump then nominated Walker to serve on the Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia, the most prestigious appeals court, as it fields appeals related to Congress and federal agencies, which Republicans ultimately confirmed him to because they're all a bunch of Vichy collaborators, and I guess they're going to have to suffer the consequences of that collaborating real soon. Other Trump judicial nominees are not qualified ratings for more nefarious reasons. The ABA wrote in an October 2019 letter that Lawrence J.C. Van Dyke, who Republicans ultimately confirmed to serve on the Ninth Circuit, is arrogant, lazy, an ideologue, and lacking in knowledge of the day-to-day practice, including procedural rules. There was a theme that the nominee lacks humility, has an entitlement temperament, does not have an open mind, and does not always have a commitment to being candid and truthful, the ABA wrote in its letter, adding that there were also concerns about Van Dyke's anti-LGBTQ stances. Ultimately, Senate Majority Leader Moscow Mitch McConnell has made confirming Trump judicial nominees almost the singular priority of his tenure, even changing the rules to help pack the courts with Trump's picks. David Badish of the New Civil Rights Movement, by way of Raw Story, brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Trump and his administration have ordered a halt to screenings of international airline passengers entering the United States and ordered the end of the program to be secret until a public announcement is made, Yahoo News said. As on 12:01 a.m. Monday, September 14th, all screenings will come to a halt. That includes temperature checks and health questions related to potential COVID-19 symptoms, as well as contact information which is used for contact tracing, one of the best methods for containing the spread of coronavirus. Why is he doing this? Is it really because Wall Street lives matter more than everybody else's lives? I wonder. Without that information, it won't likely be possible to contact passengers on a flight who may have potentially been exposed to someone infected with COVID-19. Did he shut down this program before Woodward's book was coming out? Shutdown of the screening program comes just before the start of the flu season, which is expected to be especially deadly this year, and amid a rise in coronavirus infections across the country. Under Trump, the U.S. has one of the world's worst overall response to the coronavirus pandemic. There have been more than 6.5 million coronavirus cases in America alone, and nearly 195,000 deaths, far more than any other nation. And the U.S. ranks 12th in coronavirus deaths per capita, meaning there are only 11 nations with a worse record on deaths than the United States. The great Sarah K. Burris of Raw Story brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. Bob Woodward's new book, Rage, is filled with horrifying tales and brutal honesty about Trump's recklessness in leading the nation. One of the previously reported revelations about Trump's attacks on military generals, who Trump called pussies, goes far deeper than simply insults. In excerpts published by New York Times reporter Maggie Haberman, Trump told General James Mattis to commit a felony. When Mr. Mattis quit, after Mr. Trump wanted to withdraw troops fighting the Islamic State in the Middle East, Haberman described Woodward's text, when I was basically directed to do something that I thought went beyond stupid to felony stupid, strategically jeopardizing our place in the world and everything else, that's when I quit, Mad Dog Mattis said. In another incident, Trump said of South Korea that the United States is the only reason they're still alive. We're defending you. We're allowing you to exist, Trump said of South Korea. The excerpts also cited Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner for being gleeful. The Democrats defended the people of Baltimore after Trump insulted it as a disgusting rat and rodent-infested mess. Kushner, who has never worked in politics, thought it would be a great campaign strategy for the Republicans. The Democrats are so crazy, they're basically defending Baltimore, said Kushner. When you get to the next election, he's tied them to all these stupid positions because they'd rather attack him than actually be rational. Kushner appeared to be ignorant that many thought Trump was calling the people rodents and saying that the city was rat-infested. Elijah Cummings passed away just 3 months after Trump's insults, and Baltimore has not been a campaign issue for any Republican running for national office as of yet. All right, let's get to our break. And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, a celebration. Going back closer to the original title of Charles Dickens' 1850 and widely considered to be autobiographical novel, The Personal History of David Copperfield is the third effort to bring it to the big screen. Despite the sprawling story and Dickensian page count, the bones of the tale and the characters that inhabit it are all present here, and it succeeds based on its script, directorial flourishes, and mostly its performances. The movie starts with one of those flourishes, which is Dev Patel's adult David narrating his own birth. His narration, mostly taken from passages of the book, are heard throughout, usually transitionally. The script is tight and snappy, accentuating a certain type of personality rather than character development. Dickens was a critic of social conditions in the England of his time, and while there are some heavy scenes involving domestic abuse, a character with mental health issues, and poverty all around, this adaptation, perhaps more so than the novel, leaves these issues as ambiance. Director Armando Iannucci's David Copperfield is entertainment, and because of this, much of the ballyhooed multicultural casting works. Victorian England probably made the Jim Crow South look diverse by comparison, but the approach here makes the suspension of disbelief possible in this regard. Not enough good things can be said about Patel's performance in the title role, that of Tilda Swinton as Aunt Betsy, and Ben Whishaw against type as the evil Uriah Heep. The 2020 Personal History of David Copperfield is a celebration to be sure, especially for those familiar with the story and its characters. Despite Patel's narration, however, the frenetic pacing may leave those less familiar with the story behind. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Christopher Intagliata. When restaurants first shut down early in the pandemic, Americans raided grocery stores. They started cooking more at home and presumably generating more leftovers. Those leftovers can be a convenient future meal, but they've also got a dark side.
There's a tendency that if you put an item on the plate that's a leftover, there's a higher probability that you're not going to fully consume that item, and so it's probably going to go to waste.
Brian Rowe, an applied economist at The Ohio State University. He and his colleagues recently studied leftovers and food waste by tracking the eating habits of 18 men and women in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. The participants tracked what they ate using an iPhone app, and during the week-long study, the study subjects collectively piled 1,200 different foods on their plates. After analyzing what got eaten, saved, or thrown away, the researchers found that leftovers were more likely to be picked at and not fully eaten, which is a finding we can all probably identify with. But they also observed that leftovers, perhaps due to being older and less fresh, directed diners' attention to the other, more novel items on their plate, which brings up an interesting possible strategy to get people to eat their veggies.
Yeah, I guess if you have an item that you don't normally eat as much of and you're trying to get people to eat their peas, perhaps surrounding it with leftovers is a way to make them focus on the newest item on the plate.
The findings are in the journal PLOS One. Overall, Rose says one bigger lesson emerged on how to avoid scraping perfectly good food into the trash.
So for us, the real take-home here was choose a smaller meal and you're less likely to generate leftovers. And that's a good thing because leftovers, all else equal, tend to be wasted more often.
Not that Rowe doesn't have a few aspirational Tupperware sitting around.
I'm guilty of this as well. We have stuff left over from last Thanksgiving sitting around in our freezer. And I know people who have moved with frozen items before, never getting around to actually eating them. Yeah.
Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
The discovery of penicillin in 1928 by Alexander Fleming was one of the greatest scientific achievements of the 20th century. It's hard to imagine a world before the development of what many consider to be miracle drugs. However, just 90 years ago, antibiotics weren't available. Thanks to antibiotics, some common illnesses such as strep throat are now easily treated, whereas in the past they often led to serious complications. Antibiotics serve an important role in keeping you and your loved ones healthy, but it's important to remember that antibiotics only treat bacterial infections. Most common infections such as colds, flu, most sore throats, bronchitis, and many sinus and ear infections are caused by viruses and do not respond to antibiotic treatment. These infections can be overcome by simply treating the symptoms and letting the illness run its course. Unfortunately, antibiotics have often been overused, resulting in decreased effectiveness and an increase in antibiotic-resistant diseases. Antibiotic resistance, or the increased ability of bacteria to survive in the presence of antibiotics, has become a major public health threat that we all need to help fight. When a person takes antibiotics, they are at risk for possibly having a bad reaction to these drugs. Some side effects can be quite serious, or even life-threatening in the case of an allergic reaction or severe diarrhea. This is why it is very important to only use antibiotics when they are absolutely needed, and not for viral infections. Talk to your healthcare professional about the best treatment for your illness. If it is caused by a virus, follow his or her recommendation for treating the symptoms. Learn more about appropriate antibiotic use and how to feel better when you don't need an antibiotic by visiting CDC's Get Smart, Know When Antibiotics Work website at cdc.gov/getsmart/community.
For the most accurate health information, visit www.cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution. and you'll get a wondiferous pair of Netroots radio stickers for application to your backpack, your bumper sticker, or your banjo. Well, it's up to you which backpack you want to put it on. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage, because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1859. That was the day that the St. Anthony and Minneapolis Typographical Union number 42 was founded in Minnesota. It was one of the oldest unions on record in the state. 3 years earlier, printers in St. Paul had formed a union, Local 30, with a dinner to honor Benjamin Franklin's birthday. At the time, just over 6,000 white people lived in the state of Minnesota. Typographical workers were very important to the early labor movement in the United States. These printers were vital to spreading the word about the cause of labor to other workers in the era before radio, television, or computers. In Minnesota, 8 journeyman printers joined together to form Local 42. According to the History of Hennepin County and the City of Minneapolis, published in 1881, quote, the union was prosperous, having at one time on its list every journeyman printer within its jurisdiction. The War of the Rebellion practically dissolved the organization, 5 of its members entering the Union Army. Like it did for many fledgling unions, the Civil War took its toll on the Typographical Union Local 42 membership. One member, H.M. Metcalf, was killed in battle. The union was disbanded during the Civil War, reforming a decade later. Although the Civil War had disrupted labor organizing across the North, the years following the conflict saw a surge in labor activity. Wages stagnated during the war, while prices for goods continued to soar. Workers banded together for fair pay and against the exploitation that grew along with increasing industrialization. These early labor unions were prominently made up of skilled workers like these printers. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
This is Solidarity News on Radio Labor.
This is a Radio Labor report recorded on Thursday, September 10th, 2020. I'm Mark Boulanger. While the COVID-19 pandemic is rightly being focused on by governments, unions are trying to remind people that many countries and regions are being affected by other problems as well. For example, the countries in the East African region, which includes Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda, have been hit by the pandemic, a plague of locusts, and the effects of climate change all at the same time. In a recent webinar, the director of ACTRAV, Maria Elena Andre, addressed trade union activists in East Africa.
This virtual meeting gives us the opportunity to share our thoughts on ILO tools that would guide your responses to the complex triple crisis which confront the East African sub-region. The pandemic, climate disasters, and the locust plague. Due to the effects of this crisis, lives and livelihoods are under serious threat for the majority of the population. And over and above, the raging crises have exposed the extent of the deficiencies inherent in the health, social protection, labor protection, and environmental management systems of the East African countries. We remember well our good meeting on 11th of June 2020, which brought together union leaders and activists from all English-speaking countries in Africa to deliberate on the theme, stimulating the economy and promoting employment during COVID-19, at which I re-echoed what the ILO Director General Guy Ryder said a few months ago, that we need to work together, not only to build a new normal in which workers' rights and benefits would not be eroded, but to achieve a better normal to ensure decent work for all. A better normal can only be achieved if trade unions insist on the mobilization of people-centered, decent and job-rich growth and sustainable development in your country's recovery plans. Greening economies in particular will strengthen the capacity of East African countries to manage natural resources sustainably, increase energy efficiency and reduce waste, while at the same time tackling unemployment, poverty and inequality, and of course building resilience guided by the principles of a just transition, sustainable economic programs, commitment to creating decent jobs, guaranteeing labor protection and extending social protection for all. I'm informed that governments in East Africa, mindful of the need to protect workers' jobs, wages and benefits, went ahead to promulgate special labor protocols that prohibit the dismissal of workers during the COVID-19 pandemic and put a complete freeze on collective bargaining, while others have made it illegal to cut workers' wages unless the employer is unable to pay and have negotiated an agreement with the unions concerned. In addition, most governments have injected various responses to rehabilitate damaged infrastructure, to scale up investment in renewable energies, and to contain the locust plague. They've also tried to revive their economies by bailing out businesses in the hardest hit economic sectors, including small and medium-sized enterprises that operate mainly in the informal economy, which accounts for more than 80% of jobs in the East African region on average. So it is imperative for you as labor leaders to redouble your efforts. Redouble your efforts in promoting and effectively using social dialogue and tripartite mechanisms in order to seek lasting solutions to these three complex crises. Suffice it to say that confidence building and constructive social dialogue are essential to making political measures and actions effective.
And that's it. International labor news you can use. You can find our features and daily newscasts on our website at radiolabor.net. Follow us on Twitter at radiolabor. I'm Mark Boulanger. Thank you for listening. And remember, it's all about global solidarity.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 52 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting a high of 97 to 100, a bit cooler than yesterday. Some clouds this morning will give way to generally sunny skies in the afternoon. Expect widespread areas of smoke and haze, reducing visibility. Winds will be out of the west at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Clear skies tonight, though, with a low of 58, except for widespread areas of smoke and haze, reducing visibility at times. Winds out of the north at 5 to 10. And then on Friday, tomorrow, highs will be around 95, and it will be sunny, and there'll be widespread areas of smoke and haze because we have a wildfire that's burning up the whole West Coast. I don't know if you've heard. Confirmed cases of coronavirus in Jackson County down here in Southern Oregon now have increased to 928. And deceased stand at 3. Ragweed pollen is considered moderate right outside the window here at the mothership in Rogue River, Oregon. The area now is, or the air quality index in the region is very unhealthy at 255 parts per million. Do not go out, even with a mask. The daytime UV index is high at 6. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 29.97 inches. Visibility is at 2 miles, and relative humidity is at 45%. We are dry as a crisp. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased, and these people planned and these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 67 and sunny. Paris is 80 and partly cloudy. Rome is 90 and sunny with a heat advisory. Kyiv is 80 and fair. Kabul is 77 and fair. Hong Kong is 80 and mostly cloudy. Tokyo is 80 and partly cloudy with a flood advisory coming up, so take care. Sydney, Australia is 58 and fair. San Francisco, California is 57 with smoke. And New York is 75 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Anonymous worker bees and Reuters bring us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A Mexican journalist who wrote about crime in the violent Gulf Coast state of Veracruz was found beheaded yesterday, Wednesday, local media reported. The latest grisly murder of a reporter in one of the world's most dangerous nations for journalists. The body of Julio Valdivia, age 44, who specialized in the Nota Roja journalism that focuses on gruesome crime and violence, was found in the remote municipality about 100 kilometers from the state capital of Veracruz. In 2019, about half of all murders of journalists around the world occurred in Mexico, according to the Committee to Protect Journalists.
Je te donne c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Joel Schechtman, Raphael Satter, Christopher Being, and Joseph Men of Reuters bring us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Microsoft recently alerted one of Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden's main election campaign advisory firms that it had been targeted by Russian state-backed hackers, according to 3 people briefed on the matter. The hacking attempts targeted staff at Washington-based SKDK Knickerbocker, a campaign strategy and communications firm working with Biden and other prominent Democrats over the past 2 months. A person familiar with SKDK's response to the attempt said the hackers failed to gain access to the firm's networks. They were well defended, so there has been no breach, the person said. SKDK Vice Chair Hillary Rosen declined to comment, and a Biden spokesman did not respond to a request for comment. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we'll meet up here tomorrow for Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. We'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appétit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goer. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.